I'm a little concerned about the fact that so much of the attention on MSNBC and to a lesser extent CNN, lesser extent meaning that I don't watch it as much, but it's just wall to wall Trump coverage. So obviously, the former president was arrested, the other day, and it was just ridiculous coverage, and still is, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And of course, the Fox News are going after Biden. It goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, nation's business, nothing gets done. The American people need an activist government because a lot of people need help, and we're not getting it. And that's a sad state of affairs, but that's the reality of America in 2023. And, we've talked about this on this show many times, and we'll hopefully do so in the coming weeks if everything goes well, fingers crossed and all that. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's going to take more than just Bernie Sanders to do it, and a few members of the Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives. It's going to take a lot of people who are just sick and tired of being sick and tired and saying, look, we don't have much faith in leaders that are currently in Washington, D.C., so we're going to have to get people engaged, have to get, people in Washington to understand what needs to be done and continue to work with people like Sanders, who worked well with Biden in the first part of his term, the first 2 years, 21, with the passed the American Rescue Plan, and to a lesser extent, the IRA plan, which was, of course, weakened, with other plans. So, it's frustrating for all of us, including yours truly. So we will continue to find out where we go to reform, which is, I think, a good word if it's used correctly. Republicans use it as a, to take away something. Well, we got to have Social Security reform, which means eliminate. We got to take away Medicare reform. It means eliminate. I mean, actually making things better, not worse, for the person who makes $35K a year. Somebody who understands that is our next guest. He is, of course, Mr. Thursday here on the Jeff Santos Show, has been since about 2015. He is the great author of the book Black Detroit. It could be a good movie. And, of course, he is also a regular here on Thursday as the Amsterdam News columnist and a professor at City College in Harlem, New York City. We bring in our good friend, Mr. Herb Boyd. Okay. We're still trying to reach Herb Boyd, so Josh, let me know in my IFB when we have Mr. Boyd ready to go. In the meantime, let's go to the phones, and let's go to Minnesota and start it off with our good friend John in the great Twin Cities. John, what say you, sir, as we embark in another week here in America, 2023? You paying attention to the Trump land and all that?
Not much, but enough to know that there's a cult out there, and apparently it's okay, for people to threaten other citizens like Carrie Lake, that we're going to get shot because we voted for somebody other than Donald Trump. He's the great leader, and there should only be a totalitarian fascist dictator that runs this country. So what do you say to that? I mean, I don't know what to say to that. I mean, how can somebody like her get off, and she's not the only person that says that, and not have the FBI come down on her like a sack of bricks? And then, of course, we have, Mr. DeSantis, who is a wannabe fascist too, but more of he's not really a personality. He doesn't want to be worshipped. He wants to be obeyed. As an article that I read, somebody sent me from Mother Jones, which was really encapsulated everything that he's attempting to do in Florida, like get rid of, professors that don't agree with him, that teach certain, things that he's not in agreement with, law enforcement people, people throughout the whole system of government. Really, this is where we're at in 2023. I'm glad I don't live there, but the possibility of possibly having a fascist leader like Viktor Orban, in the White House is not a very pleasant,
It's not
thing
pleasant,
to
and it's
even
not a
think about.
far-fetched reality, for here in America. I mean,
No.
this is the real
Yeah.
sad part of it, and that's you know
Yeah.
that's the reality, unfortunately.
I know, and this is the thing. Is it's basically it's a failure of the media, to instruct people, and over decades of having these, idiots be able to espouse anything they want to espouse, no matter how ridiculous and stupid and untrue it is, no fact checking whatsoever. This is what happens. How do you think, like, for instance, the Soviet Union, how did they maintain power for so long? They had absolute control over the
Of the
media
entire
and
government, yeah,
propaganda, and they,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I mean,
yep.
it goes
So I
from
don't want to
Lenin to
go on, and
Stalin to
yeah,
Khrushchev. No, I mean, you get it. I mean, we're going to
yeah,
take another call in a minute
yeah,
here from my good friend Tom in
yeah,
LA, but yeah, this is
yeah,
something. It's a playbook for a lot of autocrats to follow, and it lasted
yep.
quite a long time.
That
So you know,
Yep, but that's why people are leaving in droves. Guatemala, Nicaragua, all of these different places from South America. That's their playbook, and
right?
and that was
Because
established
they'll risk their
by
lives to go
our
across
foreign
the Rio
policy
Grande.
toward them.
They'll risk
Yes,
their lives, John, to go
yeah,
across the Rio Grande and make it to
yep,
America in what they think is the promised land, but not
exactly.
necessarily,
Well,
so,
it is compared
and
to it is
yeah,
it's
in
compared
comparison
to
to
what
being
they've
raped
they've coming
and
from.
yeah, and
Yeah,
having to. You're right.
murdered. They're going
Yes.
to
Well,
murder
yeah,
you.
murder, rape.
They
You don't
come to
get
your,
water unless you
yeah. They
bow
tell
down to the
you.
dictator.
Yep.
So
My
exactly.
brother worked with an eight. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go. I don't
All
want to
right.
take too
Well,
much
thank you,
time, but
John. Appreciate
that's
it.
why
You
they
as
come.
always. You're
Yep.
spot
Yeah.
on. And it's a sad reality that
Hmm.
we're facing right now, unless things get better
Yep.
in government. Thank you, man. All right, let's go to Los Angeles. Talk to our good friend Tom in the City of Angels. Tom, hello to you, sir. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Jeff, I just want the American people to somehow wake up and realize that we are the government. We need to be the ones that are pushing back. I understand money in politics is the major issue that has happened in this country. That's the bottom line. You had Buckley versus Vallejo. You had First National Bank versus Bilotti that made corporations people, and then you had Citizens United. And if you want to know the truth, if the story of America is ever written in terms of the downfall of it, you can start right there.
Oh yeah,
Then you got media consolidation during the Clinton years in terms of what he signed. You have, now media is just all infotainment. It's no longer actual news. Yeah, it's pretty daunting. I honestly don't even watch really any of it anymore. I'm tired of, like I said, frustrated as I've been, all of that stuff. But one thing I don't understand is why it is that anybody, whether you're running against Joe Biden or whatever, that you don't say that you are from the tree of FDR, and why it is that you don't start using the things and say, we've been here before. And you know what?
yes,
We can get
exactly.
out of this.
That to me
But the
is
way we
so.
got out of this was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
It's a roadmap. We were talking with John previously. There is an understanding of what dictatorship's all about. Just follow the Soviet Union. Over the last 100 years or so, or 90 years. And it's there. And just like a better America was there from 33 to 66. Because of FDR. And it was basically enhanced to a certain extent by the likes of Truman and Kennedy and Johnson, of course, particularly the first 2 years, civil rights, voting rights, Medicare and Medicaid, and then it all went to hell in a handbasket, and we haven't recovered since because we're afraid to say,
Yep,
"Oh,
absolutely.
Roosevelt." It's even our good friend Bernie,
Medicare
as you
should
and
have
I
been
have talked
called,
about.
yeah, Medicare should have been called Johnson Care.
Right.
Social Security should have been called Roosevelt Care. So people actually remember who it was that brought these great programs to us. And that now we have all Republicans all bought off. Now you got half Democrats or a quarter of Democrats bought off. And because of that, you have, let's compromise. We're both bipartisan. To me means that both parties are bought off by the same donors. That's what bipartisan means to me. So let's just go
what the
ahead and we'll
reality
just
is.
nibble
Yeah.
around the edges of it. And yeah, we'll nibble around the edges on these great programs that we've had for years that everyone's loved and ruin the name of the programs. And now all of a sudden the Republicans come in and the autocrats come in and say, these programs don't work. And people go, yeah, it's not working for me either. I thought this was supposed to be such a great program. And then they go and privatize it. I mean, public versus private. We're not
Yeah,
public
I was
right
saying
now.
that earlier about
Honestly, I say
reform.
we the people are like I said, we the people are the government, but honestly, I don't know if we are the government because we don't have enough people that actually understand what the hell is going on to actually be able to understand collectively that we the people are supposed to be the government and we should be able to do anything. But I know it happens. You go on these big rallies, you go on these, show up on even in Washington and all that kind of stuff and have the big rally. All the politicians do is just wait it out because they know there's going to be commercials that they can be made from their donors that, get the people that vote to get out and vote for them. And we end up with the mess that we have.
Well, I got to let you go because I want to get to Mark in San Francisco. But
you bet.
I agree with you. But I think it's going to be the next generation, our Generation Z. And, with a little luck, we're going to be, hopefully having a chance to talk with them a little bit more than we have in the past. And to me, this is a really critical piece because, they have both the energy, the time, and maybe the strength to be able to deal with things that a lot of us who are, middle-aged and older, don't have the opportunity to do so anymore. So, yes, I agree with you, my friend. As always, great to hear your voice. And you're spot on with your introduction. We are the people. We are the government. And if we don't, come together in some form or shape and fashion, and particularly in our own little communities, we're never going to get there. So spot on, my friend. Thank you. All right, let's go to San Francisco. Our good friend Mark is in the city by the bay. Mark, what do you say, sir?
Yeah, Jeff, the Republicans have just released their new budget to destroy Social Security and
yes,
Medicare.
I saw that.
And another tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. I haven't heard the Democrats come out and scream about this, but this is where they're at. And, we should be destroying this party right now.
We should.
Over the airs. I mean, it's time to take off the gloves. I am sick of it. I am sick of the corruption in the Republican Party, on the Supreme Court, and in the party itself, how corrupt it is. Their leader, the so-called leader of their party, that's their nominee, is as corrupt as they come, or worse. And now they want to give more tax cuts to the rich. We're the Democrats. Why aren't they coming out telling the American people what these people are up to?
It's so easy to contrast. It really is.
It is, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating, Jeff. It really is.
No, I mean it's not only frustrating, but this is a broken record. You and I and many of our great callers and listeners have heard before. Look, it's not that hard to make a case. As Tom and I were just talking about, with FDR and what we have done going back to the 30s and given us Social Security, and then later with Johnson, Medicaid and Medicare. These are not that hard. These are programs that the American people love. And, we just don't know, understandable to a lot of people that are concerned about government screwing them because the Republicans have done that. Somebody made a comment I was reading today, Mark, and you get this, that, Biden has been the best president of this century. Well, first of all, the century is only 23 years old. Secondly, two of the presidents that occupied the presidency should be in jail. Bush too, and Trump. So, I mean, it's not exactly, the highest bar. Yeah, he was better than Obama, who probably was, had bigger expectations and failed them. And when they lost the House in 2010, it was pretty much Katie by the door at that point. And Biden, of course, has been able to do some good things in the 2 years before he lost the House. But, we could do a lot more. And the only thing we have to do is follow the roadmap that our good friends at FDR and Truman and Kennedy and, again, 2 years of LBJ have done. It's really hard. And when you have these fascists, I think you understand this. One of the things, as I follow the news over the last few days and even the last couple of weeks, that really aggravates me is that they're trying to make people like Chris Christie, DeSantis to a lesser extent, to be some kind of panacea. Oh, Scott, all these guys, they're all Republican and they all believe in the white dream, even though Scott, of course, is African-American. He plays the idea that, well, I'll get some because I'll be the token. But the point is that this is the Republicans do not have the interest of anybody who makes 35 or 45 or 65K a year. They have no interest in that. Why do we keep getting this corporate media telling us that there are alternatives in the Republican Party? There isn't anyone. Nobody.
No,
the whole party is corrupt.
No, and it's not only that, Jeff. It's that they all have the same vision. They want to cut Social Security and Medicare,
right,
and give more tax cuts to the rich over and over again. And we got guys like Schumer who don't stand up to these people. We can't go on like this. We're going to have to start calling out our Democratic representatives and tell them either grow a set or get out. I mean, I'm sick of it. On and on again with the same program, cut taxes for the rich, and we can't make articulate the argument, or we're getting ripped off. And that's Republicans too, hardworking Republicans. It's right there. They've just put their cards on the table. Now you gotta call them out, call their hand. It's time to really just call them out and take advantage of the fact that they're showing their hand, who they are, and make a point of telling the American people, aren't you tired of getting ripped off? I am.
Yeah, it goes without saying that this is aggravating people to the point where they are really going to lose any faith at all that government. That's exactly what the Republicans want you to do. They want you to say everybody sucks. We'll just continue the status quo. Let corporate America decide things. How you get your health care, how you get your education, and if you can't afford it, well, too bad. You got the bad straw. So go sit in the corner and die. That's what their policies are. You got the lucky club, that their parents were wealthy, so therefore the kids are going to be wealthy for the most part, and and that's what ends up happening, and it's extremely sad. And for someone like yourself who fought the great labor fight for many years there at the Chronicle and the San Jose Mercury News in the printing area, it can be just so heartbreaking because of all the work you guys have put in. But go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was going to say that, basically when it comes to this fight that they had over, we got to cut spending. Well, they want a charge card to give to the rich and then give us the bill. That's what it all amounts to. And they don't care about, what happens with the deficit. And we should be calling them out saying, we can't afford these tax cuts anymore. They were unpaid for. You said they were going to pay for themselves, and it's all BS. And we're tired of it. And I'm really pissed off at Schumer. He we got to get rid of him. He's killing us.
Another Wall Street guy. Somebody once called this show and called him a bag man for Wall Street. I won't go that far, but he's pretty much been bought off by that by the entity of Wall Street, and this is going to stop. His high school mate there, Bernie Sanders, wouldn't do this if he was the majority leader. And maybe that's the next role for Bernie is to run for his fellow New Yorker. Of course, many of you know that Bernie Sanders is a senator from Vermont, but grew up in New York. It's hard not to realize with that great accent of his. Mark, thank you, my friend. Well, folks, we tried our good friend Herb Boyd, but unfortunately we could not reach him. We are going to try to get him next week. In the meantime, we come back and talk foreign policy with Larry Corbin, Brian Garvey, and your calls at 833-545-5333. It is the Jeff Santos Show, a weekly show these days, at least for the next month or so. We'll be right back after this commercial timeout.
You don't have to wait for amazing deals on a new floor. Get spring Black Friday deals right now at Lumber Liquidators Flooring. This week, save up to 35% on gorgeous hardwood and waterproof vinyl floors. Plus, we can arrange for installation by professional, independent contractors. And with special financing, you can get started today. These are the floors homes are built on. Lumber Liquidators Flooring.
Haul packages for a living? A gas-powered Mercedes-Benz Sprinter delivers. Transport people? A Sprinter van with 0% financing is a 5-star idea. If food delivery is your thing, then a gas Sprinter caters to you. And if you're a general contractor, the Sprinter with 0% financing nails it. With innovation, safety, and technology, Sprinter is built for you. And it's built for your bottom line with 0% financing. The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, starting at just $33,790.
So you want to go green? How about go try aspiration.com? Shares your values on the environment and climate change. Ever wonder what the big banks do with your deposits? Well, it goes to fossil fuel companies for sure. Not at aspiration.com. Your deposits will never fund fossil fuel projects like pipelines, oil rigs, and coal mines. With aspiration.com, you get 55,000 free in-network ATMs, 3 to 5% cash back on conscientious coalition purchases, personal impact score to help you shop to match your values, and an option to plant a tree with every roundup. Deposits in your Aspiration Spend and Save account are FDIC insured up to $2.46 million per deposit by being swept to FDIC member institutions. To find out more, you can go to aspiration.com/revolution.
Hi, I'm Karen, owner of Lone Star Transfer. If you are a timeshare owner, getting out is probably a top priority. And now that annual maintenance fees are coming due, this ongoing burden and expense is at the top of your list. Thankfully, we can help. Let us do for you what we have done for thousands of others across the country. Our process is done legally, ethically, and quickly. Lone Star Transfer has a 99% success rate and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We are a family-owned business and will personally make sure your experience is a pleasant one. Don't let another day go by with maintenance fees taking your hard-earned money. Give us a call for a no-obligation consultation at 844-284-4863. That's 844-284-4863. Or online at LoneStarTransfer.com. That's LoneStarTransfer.com.
Supporting the middle class. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
33 minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show that you are tuned into, coming to you live from the South Coast here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We are going to be chatting a little foreign policy today, folks, but just a little recap for those who are either new to the show or remember the old one when we did it Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern, 12 to 3 Pacific, or even over the last month, we did an hour show between 3 and 4 daily. Our goal is to go back to Monday through Friday, 3 to 6. We are trying to put together those pieces to make it happen and to be on more platforms, both radio and television, around the nation. And I think our everyone who knows me well, we've been trying to do this for a while. So hopefully, with a little luck, once again, we'll make that happen. Our next two guests have been a fixture here on the Jeff Santos Show, mainly on Wednesdays on our international show, but we bring them in on this weekly show that we have now. Of course, we're talking about the two fantastic dynamic duo, Brian Garvey of Massachusetts Peace Action, Deputy Director of Mass Peace Action. Of course, Mass Peace Action is a sponsor of the Jeff Santos Show. And with him down Interstate 95 is our good friend, Mr. Larry Korb. He, of course, is the former Deputy Defense Secretary under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Now at the Center for American Progress as a senior fellow there. He also is a Vietnam vet, and we thank him for his service. We welcome Larry Korb and Brian Garvey. Great to have you both, guys. How are you? You look both great.
Good.
Excellent.
Doing great.
Fabulous.
Thanks.
You know, you said down I-95, but don't forget, part of it's not working.
That's right. You know, I mean, I don't laugh about this because even though I don't think anybody was hurt in this, which is amazing in itself. But I just think about the infrastructure in this country. I mean, you know, if a oil tanker, you know, not blowing up, but basically catch it on fire, you know, creates the entire part of 95 to collapse. I mean, is anybody investigating this? Or are we just going to talk about Donald Trump every 24 hours, Larry?
Well, we hope somebody is, and you know, it's going to be quite a while before it's fixed, ready to go again.
Yeah.
And it's interesting enough, it's going to drive up prices now. We think we got inflation down. Well, this is going to make it more expensive for a lot of things that go up and down that corridor.
Well, you know, I think maybe we're going to start taking that train, Larry. If you want to go to New York, take the Amtrak. It's the best way. Avoid getting to the airport, too. We got our own problems here in Massachusetts, Brian, so we'll get into that with the MBTA, but another show. All right, guys. So in the news is so much about Ukraine and Biden's son again, and, of course, Mr. Trump and you know, in his real stupidity says, you know, if he was president, you could change the whole Ukraine thing in 24 hours. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, if he just wants to give Putin carte blanche, sure. So, Brian, here we are in the middle of June here. It just seems to me that the understanding of the situation that, you know, you got a dictator in Putin, but you got people who want more and more in terms of money and weaponry in Ukraine. And it doesn't seem to be anybody who can bring these folks together. We understand what Putin is. You know, no one is saying this guy, you know, is a democratic leader. No one is saying that he's not an autocrat. You know, I mean, it's just, he is who he is. You know, I mean, this guy is the epitome of a dictator. You know, that's who he is. But we can't continue to keep putting the funds, you know, month after month, you know, from the United States Treasury, particularly with all the issues we have. Your thoughts, Brian? Where are we?
Right. If our main highway up and down the East Coast isn't even functioning, you know, maybe we should be talking about the national security implications of that, considering that the interstate highway system was built because of a need for national security. But instead, as has become our habit, we're talking about, you know, building roads in other countries, and in this case, shipping weapons to other countries. You mentioned Putin is a strong man. There's no doubt about that. But I think, unfortunately, he does maintain some level of popularity in Russia, and we can't discount that. What troubles me right now is that instead of trying to find a way out of this, it seems that we're doubling down. The latest news is that the Biden administration is pushing forward to try and get Ukraine into NATO, which is one of the main reasons that this war started in the first place. So making that kind of announcement, it really doesn't allow the Russians and the Ukrainians to try and find common cause with anyone as a mediator. I think that is an absolute red line for the Russians. So if we want this war to end in the short term, they ought to change course on that.
Well, it's really sad because as we talk about, I want to double down on this, what Brian is saying, not only about what happened in Interstate 95, but our friends at MSNBC are reporting now that over 15 million people in some states led by Republican governors could be taken off of Medicaid, Larry. I mean, again, what does this look like to the rest of the world when healthcare, which is not a guarantee in America, and as it is in most countries in Europe, you're taking people off in certain parts of, the abortion issue. You're taking people off. You're not giving them anything. And to me, you said this many times, Larry. This is a country that could potentially fall apart not by a bomb from Russia or China, but by itself, because its leaders are reckless toward the population. Larry?
Well, I think there was some good news today. In Brussels, you've got 50 countries who are providing aid to Ukraine met. And they said they could do it indefinitely. Now, that's critical because if you want to negotiate with Putin, he's got to realize that everybody's going to hold together. I think we would have been dumbfounded when this thing started if we said, after, over a year, the 50 countries would still hold together. So I do think that is important. And I think that basically the Ukraine has started their offensive, and it's not going as well as they thought. But the fact of the matter is that will also help get them to the negotiating table if they realize they can't, quote unquote, win the win the war. So I think that's where we are. I mean, and I think I got another piece of good news for you. You had Lindsey Graham and a dozen Democratic senators and Republican senators, including Susan Collins, who's a pretty moderate, saying that the defense budget that they agreed to in the budget deal, where they said, we're going to just take what Biden sent up and no additions, they want to add substantially to it. And Kevin McCarthy came out and said, they don't need any more money. They waste a whole bunch of money, So, I mean, this was really, was a holy smoke, And he talked about,
when you said good news and Lindsey Graham, I'm like, I want to see what this is all about, because usually those two, at least in my definition of good news, doesn't really work. But
but the fact that McCarthy came out and said no, I think
once in a
really
while,
is going to,
Well, again, I think that we get so many issues in this country that we got to attend to, and they're not being attended to, and people are dying. Whether it's the immigration issue coming across from Rio Grande, we were talking about that earlier, and of course this Medicaid thing, the abortion issue. I mean, you can go on and on and on. It's really sad, and I would like to see some kind of peace. That's why I've been saying, I think both of you agree with me, that if Biden was to say, this is it, I am not running for a second term, he could really focus in like a laser beam on this issue. And I think, not only win himself a Nobel Peace Prize, but, make the country and the world, for that matter, in a much better and stronger position. Brian, do you feel that there is enough pressure from the Democratic Party to try to make what I just said and what both of you have agreed to, to put pressure on Biden to handle this crisis now and some other issues too, domestically, or is just sort of this go along to get along?
I don't think there is enough pressure. I think the Democratic Party is very fractious. It's been true for a long time that they've always considered themselves a big tent party. What's the line about the Democrats going back 100 years? Someone said, I belong to no organized party. I'm a Democrat.
Right.
I think
Will
Will
Rogers, right?
Rogers.
Yeah.
That's still true. That's still true. You have people like Joe Biden, the wine cave crowd, folks that want to really court business interests and big money. And then you have progressives, and they really have not found a way to get together and have agreed upon values. So I don't think there is pressure coming from any one part of the party that's great enough for such a consequential shift, like the president of the United
I agree.
States deciding not to run again. Seems that the only thing the party can agree on right now is that they have to stick with what they have. But I do think that he has put a lot of his eggs in this basket, and now we're seeing President Zelensky saying that, you know, if this counteroffensive is successful, then we're going to win, then Russia's going to lose this war. You know, the scary thing about that is, what if the counteroffensive continues to sputter and not do well? You know, putting all our eggs in this basket, I don't think is a sound strategy. I think it's incredibly risky.
I agree. Talking with Brian Garvey and Larry Korb here on the Jeff Santos Show. Let's open up the phone lines at 833-545-5333. Let's go back to John in Minnesota. You're next here on the Jeff Santos Show. John, what say you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is incredibly risky, and many people will die, and most of them probably will be Ukrainians, soldiers, and citizens. There'll probably also be a lot of Russian casualties, but yep. And so, I think that apparently, there is a lot of reticence to, even talk about negotiations, a ceasefire, etc. And from what I understand, that is really not the policy of some of the other allies and NATO members. But, we should also reflect back on NATO. NATO was established, to protect us from the Soviet Union. Well, I guess now we've created a new Cold War. So we need maybe a larger umbrella that just, isn't just about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's the rest of the world.
There are a lot of countries
China,
now
India.
in there that have nowhere near, any access to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. And,
Larry,
they're
you've been
moving
involved in these.
nuclear weapons. I'm sorry. They're moving nuclear weapons into Belarus. And so this could escalate, into the very last war. But I guess, the profits of the military, the companies, they'll be okay, except they won't be able to spend their ill-gotten gains anywhere because the world will be destroyed. It's a very real possibility, and it's a waste of money. I don't think it's going to.
No, it is.
You talked about infrastructure, et cetera. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got a lot more important and pressing things to do here in the United States. No, I hear you. Larry, let me ask you this, because we've talked about this many times. You mentioned the fact that, when George W. Bush, brought other people into NATO and expanded NATO and all and so forth, it just created a lot of problems, which we still face today. Now we're looking at Finland and I think Sweden. And those are, really neutral countries for many, many years. And, if it's, they need protection, I don't necessarily know if it's NATO is the best avenue for them. But, I think John makes a good point, is that we need to have a more inclusive, way of protecting from, the viciousness of Putin and, to other countries who are powerful as well. Your thoughts, Larry?
Well, if you go back and you take a look at it, and as Brian was talking about, in 2008, Bush, President Bush said, he wanted to bring Ukraine into NATO. That was not necessary at that time because Russia was not acting, like they are now. And they saw, he also mentioned Georgia and Ukraine. And the Russians really took that as, well, if they bring Ukraine in, they're going to be, attacking us. So, but it's different now. I think the fact that Putin has launched this war, you see NATO expand. Finland and Sweden had been neutral for years. They joined NATO. When NATO was founded, it had 16 countries. Now it has 32. And I think it has a different role, because if you take a look at what's happening in this war, they're not sending any men or women to fight there. They're sending equipment for the Ukrainians to fight. That's a big difference. I mean, if you had Americans on the ground there, then you're really talking about it getting, out of hand. And yeah, there is the danger, John is right, of nuclear war. But I think we have communicated to Putin, Bill Burns, the CIA director, still has communication with, look, you don't even want to go there, because if you do, we're all, out of here.
Toast.
Because once
Yeah.
you start a nuclear war, you can't stop it. So I do think that basically Russia underestimated. They never thought you'd get 50 countries supporting Ukraine. And the fact that you have, I think, prevents this war from getting, further. We've had a lot of people, like over 200,000 Russians have been died. And you're beginning to see some cracks, in Russia, with people complaining. Now, I don't know where it's going to lead, but you're beginning to see some people do it. And you're beginning also to see Europe more united. Than ever. So I think Putin's already lost. The real question is, under what terms does he agree to,
Right.
end this particular thing? And is this the beginning of the end for him? And that, of course, would be good for, security in there and in the world.
Well, yeah, it'd be good for security, it'd be good for the people of Russia. Frankly, not to have somebody who's concerned about his own wealth and not the wealth of the average Russian. Finish your point.
And don't forget, the nuclear agreement, New START, expires in 2026. We got to get going on that again, because that's really. By the
way, any of your colleagues that used to meet with in Moscow, do they at all communicate at all? Or are they just sort of not allowed?
What happened? I had this Russian NATO dialogue for like 10 years. With Gromyko, a lot of Russians. Once this war started, they were cut off. They tried again once, but it didn't work.
Yeah. Brian, I know this is sort of a, an analogy that, is really created for 1945, and maybe we should leave it at that. But I'm wondering, if we start talking, particularly with our European allies, about a Marshall Plan for Ukraine. A domestic concern as opposed to weapons. Let's talk about butter. Let's talk about, the idea that we can provide not only the United States Treasury, but others. There's a lot of money in the world, and to help the poor farmers. We've talked about the environmental disaster of the wheat fields. I mean, that to me should be the focus, and maybe that would get people more engaged in this process and say, look, this is what you should be talking about. This is what should be at the levels, in Ukraine, and to get a meeting with Zelensky and Putin. That's what is at stake here. Help people. Don't forget about. Don't stop the idea. Keep the idea going to more bombs, more planes, and so forth. Brian?
I think first of all, you have to get the shooting to stop before you can talk about rebuilding. That's the first step. You got to get to a ceasefire. You and I and Larry have been talking for months now that we don't think that there's a military solution to this.
There isn't.
It's going to grind down into a battle of attrition, where whoever's trying to take ground on the offense is going to lose massive amounts of troops, which no one wants to see any more young men and women die in this conflict, or any more civilians get caught in the crossfire. It's, we're seeing with the destruction of this dam, ecological disasters, the threat again of the Zaporizhzhia power plant having some troubles because of this. The threat of nuclear devastation is not just from nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, I would love it if the countries involved would start talking about rebuilding, but unfortunately, they're talking about escalation. We're talking about sending fighter jets now, training. That's another escalation. And one more thing, you always have to be wary about saying it can't get any worse. Unfortunately, Putin is not the most authoritarian right-wing person in Russia. So
yeah, that's true.
Him being toppled or him going away, let's not think he couldn't be replaced by something worse, because that is a possibility.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. I mean, just as if we know Trump, there's probably people worse than him too, as the great filmmaker Michael Moore pointed out in that movie about Trump. Larry, just a couple of minutes here. I just think that, if the dialogue in your city, in the great city of Washington, D.C., some people refer to it as a swamp. I think that, we're never going to get to first base, in what Brian is saying, because at least the idea of talking about a Marshall Plan or rebuilding or whatever the case is, maybe bring in the environmental focus, because again, we need to get wheat and we need to get a big part of how, Ukraine can make some money. That to me has to be somewhere. I don't know what, in the corridors of Congress, we got a wackadoodle, even though McCarthy was right to say that, you're spending too much money on defense. Again, like the clock, a broken clock is always right twice a day, right? So your thoughts here before we end this.
Well, I think it's really, I assume that Biden is keeping contacts with the Russians. Okay, you're not going to see it, publicly.
Yeah, you're not going to see it, right?
That they're trying to come up with some of the things that we've spoken about here. And if they're not, you would be surprised that you're trying to provide a back channel. And as I mentioned before, this, in my view, is going to end like the Korean situation. Nobody wins, nobody loses. I mean, we don't even have a peace treaty in Korea. We have an armistice to stop fighting.
Exactly.
And you have a demilitarized zone. And, here we are 50 years, and South Korea is doing great. Now, North Korea is acting like they always did, And so I think that's the way out of this. And, you've got to hope that Putin comes to his senses and realizes, as the economy starts going and everything. Listen, I've got to run here. It's almost 4 o'clock. I've got another thing here, my boss. Okay.
We got to run too, my friend. Thank you, Larry. Brian, thank you. We will hopefully have a chance to talk in the next couple of weeks. We look forward to that. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Hey, I want to thank Josh for producing this broadcast. We're sorry we couldn't get to our good friend Herb Boyd today. Hopefully we'll get to him next Thursday. Have yourself a good rest of your week and a great weekend, folks. Keep on fighting peacefully. Until next week, my name is Jeff Santos, and right now it is my time to say I gotta go.